Hello, everyone. Welcome, Elaine, Ethan, Edward, Nora, Kevin, Jens, and Geeta, and whoever else is watching but not saying anything. So welcome to all of you for another episode of BNN, the Buddhist Insights Network. So tonight we have our favorite female resident monk, Aya Soma.
Favorite because it's the only one.
So she's absolutely delighted for the opportunity to share Dharma with you this evening. And usual, she'll be beginning by leading us in a period of meditation. Who likes meditation? I like meditation. Do you like meditation? Well, guess what? That's what you're getting. So, Aya Soma. Hello, Jessica Pacholsky. Good buddy. So Aya Soma is going to be leading us in some meditation. Then she'll be talking about Buddhism. Another thing that I think most of us like. Hello, Sally. And after she talks for a while, then we'll have the opportunity for questions as usual. Sally says, yes, we like. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Bante, who is particularly excited tonight.
Ethan says, Buddhism is neat.
Yes, it's true. We're all excited about Buddhism. That's a good thing. All right. So we can start with a little bit of meditation practice. So find a comfortable position. Make sure your back is upright, that you're sitting upright. And rock your body a little bit left to right to make sure you have a balanced position. And you can close your eyes or leave them slightly open. And start by relaxing your body, going through your entire body from the tip of the head to the tip of the toes. Relaxing any point of tension you might find. Relaxing your forehead. Relaxing your jaw. Relaxing your mouth. Relaxing your shoulders, your arms, your belly button. Relaxing your legs. You can start by bringing your attention to the breath. Paying attention to each in-breath and out-breath. Narrowing down your focus to the nostrils. And looking carefully at the quality of the breath by the nostrils in each in breath and out breath. Welcoming each in breath and out breath with a mind and attitude of curiosity. Really experiencing every single tiny sensation, constantly changing. thoughts appear in the mind, we let them appear and disappear on its own without grasping or hating them. And keeping our attention, our sustained thought on our meditation practice, on the object of the breath, the in breath and out breath at the tip of the nose. welcoming each in-breath and out-breath with a smile on our face, acknowledging how pleasant the breath feels like when we pay attention to it. So you can relax and stretch a little bit if you need to.
And welcome to Stacy and Boone. A couple more friends joining in. Jessica says, we love Vansoma and Dhamma. So again, this evening, hello, Yenny. Good to see you, Yenny. So this evening, Ayasoma will be speaking about Dhamma. So please feel free to type in questions at any time, and I'll read them out for her at the end of the talk. So please, go ahead.
Thank you, Bante. So, generally, when we think of retreats and meditation, we think and we see, when we see other practitioners, a lot of stillness. And sometimes we're seeing the truth. But most often than not, actually, what we're not seeing is the internal chaos that is happening in the mind of other practitioners. But when we look at our minds, then we can have a sort of idea of the work that we need to do and the chaos of that. It's kind of like you're opening a box that seems, kind of still. You open it up and there's a lot of noise and chaos and activity happening inside. So I actually wanted to share with you tonight, since my mind is quite dull today. I'm affected by the hindrance of sloth and torpor, which I rarely actually experience. But these days, because a lot of things are going on, I think I'm actually physically and mentally tired. So instead of boring you with my sort of nonsensical stream of consciousness, how about I just inspire you by reading you some of the words of the Buddha? Much better, much better. So I have this sutta here that I'm going to share with you, which is called the simile of the tortoise. Tortoise. Okay, I just learned a new pronunciation. I always read it in my mind as tortoise, but apparently it's tortoise.
Tortoise.
Okay, maybe I'll say turtle.
Yeah, let's go with that.
It's a little bit too difficult for me. All right. So it's from the Salayatana Samyutta. And it goes, bhikkhus, in the past, a turtle was searching for food along the bank of the river one evening. On that same evening, a jackal was also searching for food along the bank of that same river. When the turtle saw the jackal in the distance, searching for food, it drew its limbs and neck inside its shell and passed the time keeping still and silent. Very smart turtle. The jackal had also seen the turtle in the distance, searching for food, so he approached and waited close by, thinking, when this turtle extends one or another of its limbs or its neck, I will grab it right on the spot, pull it out, and eat it. But because the turtle did not extend any of its limbs or its neck, the jackal, failing to gain access to it, lost interest in it and departed. So too, bhikkhus, Mara, the evil one, is constantly and continually waiting close by you, thinking, perhaps I will gain access to him or her, or they, access to them through the eye or through the ear or through the mind. Therefore, bhikkhus dwell guarding the doors of the sense faculties. Having seen a form with the eye, do not grasp its signs and features. Since if you leave the eye faculty unguarded, evil, unwholesome states of covetousness and displeasure might invade you. Practice the way of its restraint. Guard the eye faculty. Undertake the restraint of the eye faculty. Having heard a sound with the ear, having smelt an odor with the nose, having savored a taste with the tongue, having felt a tactile object with the body, having cognized a mental phenomenon with the mind, do not grasp its signs and features. Since if you leave the mind faculty unguarded, evil, unwholesome states of covetousness and displeasure might invade you. Practice the way of its restraint. Guard the mind faculty. Undertake the restraint of the mind faculty. When, bhikkhus, you dwell guarding the doors of the sense faculties, Mara, the evil one, failing to gain access to you, will lose interest in you and depart, just as the jackal departed from the turtle. Drawing in the mind's thoughts as a turtle draws its limbs into its shell, independent, not harassing others, fully quenched, a bhikkhu would not blame anyone. I find this sutta so beautiful. See, sloth and torpor kind of disappeared. It energized me quite a bit. I love the Dhamma. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu to the Buddha. So I'm sharing this because aside from being a beautiful sutta, I think it's also very relevant when we have to deal with the 5 hindrances during meditation. And what I particularly like, well, actually there are lots of different things that I particularly like, but in the end, when he says independent, not harassing others, and fully quenched, and harassing others, when I first read that, it just brought up to the mind what Ajahn Chah actually also always talks about in terms of, for example, when we hear sounds in meditation and it bothers us and we start obsessing so much of external conditions and going, the sound, if there's sound weren't here, if the people weren't talking, or if the chickens weren't that loud, or if the heating system weren't that obstructive, right now I could have so much peace. So we're constantly harassing, bothering the sound instead of leaving the sound alone, letting go of our attachment or aversion towards the sound or the smell. How many times, if you're at home especially, perhaps it's close to lunchtime, or now perhaps close to dinner, and you're sharing the space with someone else who's not following the 8 precepts. This is, of course, if you're following the 8 precepts, like we are here. And all these smells are rising in the atmosphere, and your mind is going there, grasping, harassing the smell. So the smell is not the problem. The problem is our attachment towards it. And how beautiful is the metaphor that the Buddha brings up to us of the turtle. And also of Mara being always there, in one sense, to tempt us. And Mara is always to be considered and seen as an actual being, but also as something that we do. So our kind of defilements, taking the best out of us. And there is a way out of this. So sometimes we feel this kind of hopeless sensation while we are in meditation practice, or we go about our days, where there's almost a kind of like a sense of persecution, whether it's sensual desire, whether it's aversion, very difficult. Our friend Tina has been sharing the past couple of weeks or nights how difficult it was for her to let go of these thoughts of aversion towards her colleague. So something like that can be constantly present there and afflicting us. So we have this idea that it's not something that we can really do much about. Well, right now, like my sort of sleepiness and kind of fogginess, daziness, like, really, like, very much relevant. I can totally see how, so the Buddha talks about it as this prison. I feel imprisoned. I feel like I can't, there's kind of like no way out, no escape. But actually, just by reading this sutta out loud to you all, I aroused the energy and I saw a little bit of a glimpse, something, a way out, which is what the Buddha suggests to to counteract the hindrance of sloth and torpor. But what I feel it's extremely precious is once again the copying, the wisdom, the approach of wisdom of the turtle, who understands the danger of all of just following our mind in a reckless way. So seeing, acknowledging the danger. Actually, something similar happened the other day when we opened the chicken coop in the morning to let the chickens out, our rescue chickens in the backyard. And at a certain point, they were not running towards the bushes like they normally do. And they were kind of hanging out towards underneath the porch in the monastery. And we were like, oh, that's very interesting. What are they doing? They seem a little bit wary. And we saw a fox peeking at them. And so the chickens were like, I see you, Mara. I see you right there. You're not fooling me. But they haven't developed the wisdom and the kind of like great conditions of the turtle to actually have an escape. So they could see the danger. They could see the gratification of the bushes, but they had no escape. So instead of being a chicken, which I feel it's like how much more or less we kind of go about the world, perhaps we should build that sort of wisdom of the turtle that creates the shape of the turtle, who then understands what the escape is, which is to actually fortify our practice so much that we then understand that when we see something, a form with the eye, we do not grasp its signs and features. So we think that all of these flashes of desire, of whatever, anxiety, aversion, etc., they come and they take over us, take over our mind. But fundamentally, it's actually something that we have created the foundations in order for that to happen, because we haven't put up the preventative measures of restraining ourselves in each moment, of fully understanding, mainly actually when we are having a great experience, understanding, not indulging in it, or not becoming averse to it. So once again, getting back to what Ajahn Chah was recommending, of not disturbing whatever is out there, not disturbing the sound, not disturbing the cake, not disturbing the pizza, not disturbing whatever it is that we're getting in contact with. But we're constantly disturbing our experience, which means that we're leaving all our faculties unguarded and open for Mara. to come and stir up. It was like, oh yeah, welcome, Mara, come in. Would you like some tea? Some pizza? So always remembering, obviously, that it's a practice. And so when we are in meditation practice, we have an opportunity to really see the workings of the mind, really see all of these tendencies of mind, really see what is there that we're dealing with and what it is that we are creating in each moment. Which requires actually quite a lot of courage, because we have to really also take responsibility. And it becomes personal, because then we understand, oh, it's something that I'm actually doing. And I'm experiencing whatever I'm experiencing because I actually have been doing this for quite a long time. And that's when it can get a little bit uncomfortable. Because instead of poor me, poor me, poor me, it's like, well, poor me, but is it really poor me? I mean, still poor me, but let's do something about it. Let's actually practice. Let's, instead of indulging and continuing on what doesn't work and bring to suffering, really looking at our experience. And also noticing that whenever we point our mind towards our experience, even in the state of sloth and torpor that I'm currently experiencing, you can see it as constantly changing. You can see the impermanence of it, which then gives you a glimpse also of the escape. Also an idea that it's not always like that. So, Bhante forced me to to share Dharma this evening. I was fighting against it. And that's all I have to share. Okay. I hope you enjoyed this sutta.
Okay, thank you, Aya. And please feel free to type in some questions and I'll read them out for Aya Soma to answer. First, hello to some more friends checking in. Hello, Marielle. Hello, Bradley. Hello, Victor and Peng Li. So welcome, everyone. And we do have some questions. So Boone says, good evening, Aya. When we start to meditate, we are supposed to look for the pleasantness in the body. Does it mean the vibrations, the heat, or the heartbeat? When I focus on pleasantness and make my mind holding the entire body as a single object, can you explain more about the steps?
What I refer to during the guided meditation, so what I find very helpful whenever I am pointing my mind towards a particular object, is to, after a short while, notice how pleasant it is to hold the mind there. Because that then creates the conditions for my mind to be more prone to stay with the object at hand, especially if my mind, in particular, doesn't find certain objects particularly interesting. So I actually use the hindrance of sensual pleasure as a sort of to my advantage. So I know that my mind likes certain nice sensual pleasures. Hence, pointing attention, when I point my attention towards the breath or whatever it is, the hands, something that my mind doesn't naturally gravitate towards. But if instead of just going, okay, now I see, I look at okay, the hands feel like this, okay. Oh, look at that delicious thought. Ooh, thinking, yes, yes, yes. Yum, 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 yum. Oh, okay, yes, I want that, I want that, I want that. So that, my mind gravitates naturally towards whatever mind object appears. So instead of doing that, I just go, oh, actually, by pointing my attention towards this physical sensation, I'm actually starting to experience like a nice, pleasant feeling. Let me acknowledge it. Oh, okay, yeah. Give me more of this. Give me more of this. Give me more of this. So you want to understand what your sort of Achilles heel is, and use it to your advantage in meditation practice. This is what I try to do. Whatever doesn't work, then make it work to your advantage instead of pursuing whatever habit you have. Because once I start noticing, paying attention to, for example, my breath or to the hands with that kind of slightly greedy, nuanced to it, then the thoughts are less attractive. I love personally thinking, also because I'm a creative person. So there's lots of like delicious thoughts that appear in my mind all the time. And I train myself to indulge with them, to start brainstorming and thinking and creating all these. Sometimes they're actually like also really good thoughts, as in productive, like for the benefit of beings, etc. And then I'm like, oh, I really should be thinking about this because then I will forget, like it's been like that since day one. But day one, I would just go on it and really like craft the whole business plan of whatever I was working on. Now I just drop that immediately and cultivate and direct my craving towards something else, towards something that is worth developing, something that is worth paying attention to, that leads towards liberation.
And Marielle says, today is the first day I was able to follow the eating precept time-wise. Yeah. Well, congratulations. She says, however, I'm left with a few questions. At evening, we can eat a little cheese, but how much cheese is enough cheese? Also, can we eat cheese and drink juice? So how much is enough cheese?
When right before you think it's enough. So basically you want to practice always a little bit of renunciation even there. So if you think you could still have a little bit more, then go, okay, actually, I don't need this. And that's it. And that's when you're actually using it as a tonic, as medicine, which is the purpose of it, instead as a distraction, as another sort of opportunity to indulge in sensual pleasure. And going, okay, well, this is allowable. So craving. And sometimes skipping it altogether if you don't feel like it's necessary. So looking at your mind, being, once again, truthful with yourself. Like you have to go, okay, how much craving is there in my mind and how much actually do I need this tonic, this allowable? And then from there, you strategize.
And yes, you can have juice as well as cheese. It's not an either or thing. Then Boone also asks, Mara, the evil one, is it our own defilements or other external forces?
Well, so there is Mara, the evil one as a being, and there's our inner defilements. And I would say it's both.
Okay. Marielle says she loved the sutta, by the way.
Yeah, it's a great sutta.
Gabriella asks, with regard to perception of impermanence, I noticed that certain negative and positive feelings fade away with time and attention. But what is the way to develop right attention? Yoniso Manasikara.
Can you repeat, please?
With regard to perception of impermanence, I noticed that certain negative and positive feelings fade away with time and attention. But what is the way to develop right attention?
Well, it seems like you're actually developing right attention. So if you're with time, you see that it's beneficial. So is it leading to awakening? Is it leading to the cessation of suffering? Then you're practicing well. If it's increasing your defilements and not decreasing your suffering, then you're not practicing well. So it seems from what you're saying that just by practicing, things are fading away and losing the grip on your experience, then you're on the right track.
She also asks, what are some things we can balance the right conditions for deep samadhi and very wide sati?
This, I think, is best to ask Bhante Subaso tomorrow morning. Definitely not me right now with my sloth and torpor hindrance.
Okay. And Kevin is reminding people to practice dana by donating to the monastery. So thank you, Kevin. That's very kind. And that's the last question. So if there's any further questions, this is your last opportunity for the evening. So please feel free to type in more questions if you like. There's some more comments, but not more questions.
Oh, what are the comments?
Well, Edward says, I built the foundation of my defilements at a very early age. That house I'm pulling down brick by brick with the help of the Buddha showing the way.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The Buddha points the way, and if we actually follow his directions, it's a sort of experiential path. We really see ourselves shedding all this skin, just like a snake, like shedding off all the defilements and becoming more and more calm, more and more peaceful, less and less suffering, and more okay with also all the difficulties. Like, for example, tonight, it's like not my best state of mind and not the best of conditions, etc. But you're kind of like, oh, okay, it's fine. As opposed to before, I would have like, oh, so much anxiety. Oh, I should be doing this and I should be doing that. Oh, so much suffering. So I know that, even though my current experience is not perfect, I have a sense of how my mind was before and how my mind is right now, and the suffering that has been shed. So I know that I am going in the right direction, and it's totally okay.
And Kevin says, this idea of an evil being that dwells in some hell realm is a hard pill for me to swallow. Very similar to Christianity's devil.
Well, there are people that actually say that Mara is not to be seen as the devil in Christianity, but actually, surprise, surprise, you would have never expected coming from me, maybe, but actually, I had a similar reaction to you at the very beginning. I was like, what is this? Seriously, like Lucifer in Buddhism? But now I'm kind of like, oh yeah, actually, a lot of things in Christianity are making a lot more sense to me, thanks to Buddhism. And in fact, actually, this is solidifying my faith in a way, because I'm realizing that there are similar archetypes in most major religions that have had little to zero interaction for countless years. So you'll see that also devas, angels, or, there's lots of different parallels. The different world of existence, realms of existence in Buddhism. Well, I come from Italy, and we study the Divine Comedy of Dante Alighieri, who has done an incredible depiction of all the different realms of existence in both paradise and hell. So there are lots of actually parallels, lots of overlaps between Christianity and Buddhism. And at the very beginning, I had a strong negative reaction to it. And now I have actually a very positive reaction towards it, because it actually kind of gives me, well, maybe, if a lot of people are kind of talking about similar things, even though I don't have an experience of the supernatural or different realms of existence, perhaps, there's some truth to it. How is it so? Like, how is it that so many different beings without talking without communicating that much, have sort of similar realizations? So there's something to it. And, at the very beginning, I was only approaching Mara as an archetype of the defilement, and that really worked for me. But now, actually, as my practice is actually, rather than maturing, well, maybe as my practice is maturing, but also as my sort of scientific materialism, which is cultural conditioning, by the way. Scientific materialism is because I was born in the 80s in a particular society, in a particular historical circumstances. So as my scientific materialism is shutting off a little bit, I am kind of like more free of the burden of having to think thinking that I have to think in a certain way, and going like, oh yeah, well, actually, Mara can totally be a being, and actually it's completely okay that you can call him Lucifer if you want. And that's also why I'm actually quite okay with all the different bodhisattvas or devas that are here at the monastery from the Christian tradition outside. Like, I see no difference, no problem. Yeah.
Okay. Can I add a little bit to that?
Sure.
One thing I would change, though, so you said an evil being that dwells in some hell realm, but actually Mara, it dwells in one of the heaven realms. So Mara is a deva. So to be born as Mara is the result of mostly good karma, because Mara is a very happy being who lives a very pleasant life in a very pleasant realm. Also, as far as I can tell, Mara does not want us to suffer, but he does want us to be under his control. That's a big difference.
Though I think it's slightly similar in Christianity as well, because in fact, Lucifer was a deva, was an angel. So born in paradise and then goes to precipitates. I don't remember anymore because I was very young when I learned these things, and now it's the first time that I'm kind of like, oh, that's interesting. But I remember vaguely. Yeah, we are taught that he's an angel. He was an angel anyway.
Remember that. So then Gabriella asks, what are some other similes you find useful in the suttas?
Mamma mia, it's a big, big question. So of course, right now my mind is blanking out, but normally there's everything. What similes do I find useful in the suttas? Everything is on fire, for example. The eye is on fire. The nose is on fire. All the other sense bases are on fire. So that was actually, I found that simile even particularly like strong and relevant when we were in Australia in December during the wildfires, um, and we were in Sydney, and we were surrounded. Like we would go to a monastery, and then it would be caught on fire right after. And we were in Sydney, and the air was very difficult to breathe. So it was that's what always made a lot of sense to me. But there it was also like 360 degrees. You could also like just tangibly see how everything is on fire, and how our delusion also, how we don't want to see things. So even though we were there and it was so evident and completely absurd and difficult to ignore the situation, still the mind would actually react either with sloth and torpor, or with like pretending that things weren't there, like trying to like, oh yeah, everything is good, la la la. Really bizarre. So I was having these sort of disconnections in actually really seeing the tendencies of the mind towards delusion while everything is on fire. And so it's no different than our situation in every single moment, whether there's not a pandemic or there is a pandemic, whether there is a wildfire burning everything, whether there's not a wildfire. That is our experience in every single moment. So yeah, the Buddha is incredible with all his simile. Yeah, the sutta, the lump of foam, the sutta that we went through with Bhante Sudaso the other day. That's also one of my favorite suttas that really gives the idea of our experience and really breaks it down with form as foam, Vedana as bubbles, etc.
And Sally says, I remember that chocolate containing milk is not an evening allowable, but cheese contains milk and is okay. Why?
Welcome to the Theravada allowables. They make no sense, but for the most part, that is always like actually, we all ask the same question. But then it's also interesting because it's also, at the very beginning, I thought it was because I was Italian and we don't particularly like following rules where I come from. So like we're kind of like, seriously, this makes no sense. But then I noticed that it doesn't matter. It's like any single ethnicity, etc. We're just like, what? But it's also because it's so few things that then your mind starts trying to crave something else. A lot of people actually become obsessed with the allowables. At the very beginning, I hated everything that, all the allowables. Like I was fine with the allowables. Like I would totally be okay eating cheese up until noon. And then after noon, I would hate the idea of cheese because it was the only thing that was allowable for me. Or fruit juice. Like I hated them. I hated them so much. Chocolate too. I still do because I don't like chocolate. But before, even things that I liked, and it was just because that was the only thing present and I wanted something else. So it was the wanting the problem. So now I'm fine with the allowables. It doesn't matter if milk is the first ingredient or the last. It's an allowable, so it is. Okay, how am I feeling? What do I need? Does my body need something? So they're not particularly interesting, the allowables, but I take them. Actually, these days I'm only, not only, but yeah, aside from cheese, most of the time I try to have seaweed because I have a medical reason for iodine. I don't know how you pronounce that in English.
Iodine.
Iodine. Well, tonight I can't get one accent right.
Okay. And Lamu asks, can one be a good meditator if one hasn't heard all the suttas?
No, actually the Buddha says that if you master one sutta, that's all you need.
Okay. Marielle says, until what time can we have the small snack in the evening?
There is no, well, actually, there is in the schedule a particular allotted time, which is from 5 to 6 p.m., which is the break time. And that's where you can consume your allowables.
Okay. And Victor asks, I try to do meditation, but keep changing from anapanasati to metta to fire of a candle to statue of the Buddha. Is that wrong?
If it's in one single session, then yes, because you're practicing craving meditation with some, better objects than the usual objects. So instead of like cookies, etc., like you're actually craving for different types of meditation practices. But we're trying to practice letting go. So, as Bhante always recommends, which I find very useful, is to pick the subject of meditation that you're going to use and stick to that, whether you like it or not. As in, you pick it and at the very beginning for a particular reason. What do you want to develop? Set your schedule ahead of time instead of being too creative while doing it. Then you can be creative within the scope of the meditation practice. And by creative, I mean not jumping from one technique to another or starting to indulge in different thoughts and cravings, but rather experiencing what is currently going on. Kind of like what I was also describing beforehand. Looking at what your strong defilements are present in the moment and turning them to your advantage. So in that way, then meditation practice, it's my experience, that can be something very creative instead of static, because you're really looking at what is present in the mind, at the workings in the mind, understanding your mind, and then working with it instead of against it.
And Victor asks, is Mara allowed to make an effect in the Rupa or Arupa Brahma?
That's another question for Bhante.
So my understanding is that since Mara is one of the sensual devas, that he doesn't have any power over the Brahma devas. That those beings are higher in the celestial hierarchy, so he can't influence them directly. But I'm not sure this has actually gone into anywhere in the suttas. So that's just my understanding, but I might be wrong. Boone says, my experience with fasting is not when I fast, but I get problems when I break fast. I always find reasons to eat. Any advice?
Finds always reasons to eat after breaking the fast. Maybe you shouldn't break the fast. Practice further with it. Honestly, so there's not anything morally wrong in eating. First of all, let's clear this up. So we don't not eat afternoon, because otherwise, if we eat afternoon, we go to hell. Like, it's not it's not a moral issue, but rather it's an opportunity for practice. So it sets the conditions so that we can really look at our minds and our relationship with food. So obviously, it doesn't happen just because you fast for a period of time, then all of your defilements revolving around food disappear. It takes a little bit, it takes some time. So I have done personally considerable, incredible progress with food, which was one actually of my major defilements coming in. It was anger and obsession with food were my number two defilements. And I actually made significant progress on both of them. but also because they were so coarse that obviously, there was a lot of shaving off to be done. But it didn't happen overnight. Like, you have to, I don't know how long you've been practicing for, but take it as an opportunity to really look at your mind. And then when you're not practicing the 8 precepts, give yourself some other sort of parameters. Perhaps instead of just eating whenever you want, just eat at the appropriate meal time. So if you're having dinner, just have dinner. Don't have pre-dinner, 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 after lunch, mid-lunch, mid-break, like a million times a day. But practice moderation. Always reflect. Another thing that is very useful, that has helped me a lot, is noticing the drawbacks of food. So overeating has an incredibly unpleasant physical feeling. So when you overeat, instead of perhaps lying down and kind of sleeping and taking a nap, actually don't do that and really stay with the physical sensation, with the sort of sluggish mind, all of the side effects. Another useful technique is to eat very slowly. Our friend Key from Australia recently went to a retreat with the Venerable Thap Hai, who has some incredible ways of teaching mindfulness of eating. And so they got them to eat their meal with the other hand, not the hand. How do you say?
Eating with your offhand.
Eating with your offhand.
Yeah.
Tonight it's becoming an English class for me. So eating with your offhand. So then it's significantly slower and more difficult. So it takes more time. And you'll see that it's also not that pleasant. The more actually you pay attention to the process of eating, the least pleasant it becomes. So a lot of the things that I was obsessed with before, now I'm kind of like, okay.
Okay, and Sally also has a question on food. She says, if we have craving for delicious food, will it impact our meditation badly? I never thought it's a big problem. Except meditation, eating is the second thing I can enjoy.
Well, so there you go. You answered yourself. And so you clearly have, with every sensual experience, the Buddha always tells us to pay attention to the gratification, that clearly you have a lot of gratification in the food experience. The drawbacks, it doesn't seem like you have developed the drawback of the experience of food, and the escape. You kind of heard the escape because it's always pretty much the same. So you have a general idea. Now develop the drawback. So whenever you see that your mind is too much wrapped up with, oh, so beautiful, so great. Oh, what's wrong with this incredible sensation, experience of food? Then start noticing what we were talking about just now. Such a hassle, like the process even of like getting food. Like right now there is a pandemic, for example. Everybody's having so much problem practicing social distancing because they need to eat. So they have to. They can let go of pretty much everything except going to the grocery store to get food, at least here in West Orange, which is why actually we're hosting a CSA program. So yesterday we did our first drop off of the CSA program. For those who don't know what it is, it's community supported agriculture. So everything is done where there is no contact with people. So the farmers drop off the boxes here, and then us residents, volunteers, then leave it outside for each person that comes. And it's kind of like a whole process, like 3 hours yesterday of this whole kind of ordeal for like 39 people, you know? So it's when you start thinking about just that, and you haven't even started eating, it's just one little fragment, and you haven't even grown the vegetables. When you start growing your vegetables, actually, which we have at the Rockaway Summer House in the past, then you start noticing how much sweat and labor just goes to like grow, the food, and then to harvest it, and then to keep it productive, and then to wash it and remove the dirt, and then to chop it, and then to cook it. Then you eat it, and then it's not done because you have to then digest it, and perhaps you need to do other things like meditation, but you're too has affected you. It's not like the food that you actually wanted or that you digest properly, so then it affects you in another way, poorly, etc. So much dukkha. So you're like, oh, okay, well, I had a moment of sukha. Perhaps it lasted 5 minutes. Maybe I'll give you like 15 minutes if you have some really great Taiwanese food, for example. Wow, incredible, delicious. Then it's over. Then you have to go to the bathroom. Like, have to deal with the whole unpleasantness, and then you're back to square one, and you always have to eat, and you always have to drink. It's actually a pain having a physical body. Once I went to this retreat, that the food tasted good, but my body was having such a terrible reaction towards it, and it was horrible. So horrible. I was feeling so sick all the time. One of our resident monastics actually here is having now some trouble due to food. So she's been sick for a couple of days because she didn't digest something properly. So if you talk to her right now, I think, or just see her, you can actually get really like the sort of idea of the drawbacks of food. So we think it's a pleasant experience, but that's because we're delusional. We're just looking at the glitter part.
Okay. 2 more questions on food. Apparently it's a hot topic. So this evening we're talking
like
about Mara
expert.
and about food. So Jen says, my work schedule makes the fasting so difficult, plus the family always wants dinner and cooking, but not eating is very hard after strenuous work all day. Food is a huge thing for me also. I need to work on this. Just like dieting, the minute I tell myself I'm dieting, it seems like I'm way hungrier than before. This is happening with fasting.
Yeah, well, so the approach is wrong. When you think that the 8 precepts is the monk diet, then of course you're never going to be able to follow it unless you've been able to follow diet. So I had in my life, as a layperson, 0.00001% success rate with diets. And had I approached the 8 precepts as a diet, which probably I was kind of a little bit, not that I was like, oh, I'm taking the 8 precepts as a diet to lose weight, but the constrictions at the very beginning when I was a lay person, which is why my mind was obsessing, I think, about everything else on the menu except for the allowables, for example. I think that was like a residue, because I was not something, I don't like following rules, arbitrary rules, and it has always been something, just not part of my way of operating. So you want to take the 8 precepts not with that attitude. It's not the monk diet. You're not trying to lose weight. It's not for fun, not for pleasure, but only for the health of this body and for sustaining our spiritual practice. Very, very important. So that's why we do that reflection every day. So practicing moderation with eating, first and foremost, in every single moment, but also taking the 8 precepts. Don't take them all the time. So if you have a busy schedule, you're a lay person, you have a family, etc., then it becomes this sort of weird diet that nobody understands what you're doing. So take them for periods of time. That's also how I was practicing as a layperson. I wasn't constantly on the 8 precepts. It was a little too unpractical a lot of times. But you start taking them for periods of time, as they actually do. My understanding is in Asian Buddhist countries, it's not that all the, like in Thailand, Burma, Sri Lanka, nobody has dinner. It's not how it works. So they do take the 8 precepts on particular days. For example, start taking them on the Upasata. So every 2 weeks. It's very traditional. You take the 8 precepts with us. You can take them on Wednesday. Actually, we'll have the Upasata twice. The morning and in the evening. The morning with Bhante Sudasa, in the evening with Bhante Sanata Vihari. So you deliberately take it for one day and you see how that affects your mind. Take it as an opportunity, once again, to look really at your relationship with food as an exploratory practice. Before wanting to cut or change anything, you first need to understand how you relate to it. But not intellectually, experientially. Really look, see your mind. How does it relate to it? Then start going on retreats, and during the retreats, you can take the 8 precepts. And then if you decide to practice in a different way, more on a monastic sort of level, then I think it makes sense to take the 8 precepts.
And Sally asks, due to ignorance, we take the wrong food for our body. I think that's what we need to improve. Any advice how we can know what food is good for meditation?
Yes, well, actually, something really interesting. So unless you have a medical impediment or a history of, how do you say, the problems that one, like anorexia or bulimia, I can't remember the name, eating disorders. Unless you have a history of eating disorders, what I recommend is actually try and just plain fasting for a period of time, for a set of like 2 days, 3 days actually. Do it for 3 days. It's great. Water fasting. Just drink water for 3 days. You're going to have all these like million different cravings. Mara is going to come and visit you multiple times a day. Sit down and have tea with you. But you're just going to stay with that. And then start eating vegetables, preferably organic vegetables afterwards. And you're going to start noticing how your mind will have a different approach to food because it's looking for nutrients and it has had a bit of time to detox from all the kind of delicious cravings of food. So you will start approaching food on a different way, and you'll start understanding the difference between craving for red velvet cupcake and craving for spinach. So craving for red velvet cupcake is for fun and for pleasure. Craving for spinach will be a different type of sensation because it won't be an obsessive craving. It will be just a physical need. Your body's communicating with you. Like, I need certain nutrients in order to be healthy. And this way, I actually practiced right before my Buddhist practice. And I remember realizing, going like, oh, wow, it's really interesting how my mind is more purified in this way after fasting. It's not that I would be fasting that long. I would do it like maximum twice a year for 3 days. But it was a great way to reset and really understand what my body needed. Also to cure myself actually with food and really like your body starts speaking. It goes, I need, I don't know, whatever. A bit of rice, a bit of lettuce, a bit of olive oil, a little bit of salt, like tells you the recipe instead of like, think I want extra cheese with 3 layers of like whatever, cream and blah, 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 blah. So that then is very useful in Buddhist practice, to translate it in Buddhist practice, to differentiate, to make sense of how your mind works in relationship to food.
Great. Mariel asks, can we journal during this retreat or at least take some notes?
I think so, but unless Bante feels otherwise.
Yes, but watch yourself. So journaling can very easily turn into just a bunch of proliferation. So I usually do not recommend journaling during retreats because it tends to spark the thinking mind. It tends to build up more internal mental noise, more internal restlessness, which is not good for samadhi. So I wouldn't really recommend it. Taking some notes is okay. If something really strikes you, some point of Dhamma strikes you as being really profound or really helpful, then you might make a brief note of it to help you remember it. But I would be careful with journaling because you can just wind up destroying your samadhi that way. Then last question, Boone says, how to differentiate between Mara and defilements? Is there any difference in our approach to neutralize the temptation?
I mean, not in my practice. So ask yourself that. See, experiment. See what is your experience of Mara.
Okay, and that's the last question. So thank you all for joining in, and thank you, Aya, for resolutely leading us in meditation and Dhamma discussion. And we'll see all of you again tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. All right, good night.
Good night.